Hi, this is Carrie Brownstein.
This is DJ Premier.
This is Darren Aronofsky.
You got the RZA right here.
Rose McGowan.
Radiohead.
Aisha Tyler.
Tribe Called Quest. Fred Armisen.
Fritz Paul.
Javier Munoz, Seth Meyers.
Frankie Cosmos.
Flying Lotus.
Hi, we're Chaim, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Talkhouse Podcast. I'm Annie Fell, Editor-in-Chief of Talkhouse Music. This week, we've got a roundtable of old friends who are also, as it happens, all New York City legends. Cynthia Sley and Pat Place of Bush Tetras, with Sonic Youth's Thurston Moore and director Jim Jarmusch. Cynthia and Pat started the groove-centric post-punk band Bush Tetras in 1979, with Laura Kennedy on bass, D-Pop on drums, Cynthia as the vocalist, and Pat as the guitarist. Their original run ended just a few years later, but over the decades they reunited periodically and are back in action now, though sadly without Kennedy, who died in 2011, and D-Pop, who passed away last month after the recording of this conversation. But as Cynthia told the New York Times, Bush Tetras is a force that cannot be stopped. Their pioneering work lives on, archived in a new box set called Rhythm and Paranoia, The Best of Bush Tetras. The set, which came out on Wharfcat last week, includes 3 LPs and a booklet featuring essays by Moore, Jarmusch, members of The Clash and Gang of Four, and many others. From the box set, here's a clip of their song Punch Drunk.
Well, I wake up in the morning. Well, I wanna keep on sleeping. It's a sickening feeling when the ceiling's dripping. When the ceiling's dripping, yeah, yeah. When the ceiling's dripping on my bed.
Thurston Moore was a founding member of Sonic Youth. Now based in London, he performs and records solo. His latest album is last year's By the Fire. Jim Jarmusch is the director of films like Stranger Than Paradise, Down by Law, Coffee and Cigarettes, and so many more. He's also a musician and currently performs with the avant-rock band Squirrel. Like Cynthia says at the beginning of their conversation, they have about 40 years of friendship between the 4 of them, but this is apparently the first time they've all gotten to talk together as a group. Their decades in the making conversation covers a lot, including Cynthia and Jim's Ohio origins, Pat's influence on Thurston as a guitarist, Jim and Thurston's star-studded days working at Todd's Copies in Soho, how Pat's job at Bleecker Street Cinema inspired the legendary Bush Tetras song Too Many Creeps, and much, much more. I feel like it's pretty lucky that we got these 4 together for a chat, and I think you'll all feel pretty lucky getting to listen to it. So, enjoy.
You know what I think is amazing right now? I think this is the first time all 4 of us have been
hung out.
Yeah, Zoom. No, that we've all been talking at the same time together. I don't know if that's ever happened. But we all have like 40 some years between us. Like, no.
Maybe we should start a band.
That's a great idea. I love that.
So, when did you first see the Bush Tetras, Jim?
Well, I probably their very first shows, because Cynthia and I, we're like family. Cynthia, I consider my sister, and I met Cynthia before she even moved to New York from Ohio, because, we're Ohioans. And so I always followed whatever she was doing, all kinds of artistic endeavors, but the band was a big revelation. So I probably saw your very first shows. And I first saw Pat play with the Contortions at the show, an early Contortion show at the Millennium. That was really mind-blowing. It was kind of scary and amazing, and I didn't know what to expect.
It was scary.
Was that the X Magazine benefit?
Oh, God, it could have been. Yeah.
I saw that show. It was at the Millennium. It was called the X Magazine benefit with Contortions.
Yeah.
And like Erasers played, DNA, and Theoretical Girls.
Yeah.
Oh no, I totally remember that. It was super frightening. That was the first Contortions gig I saw too.
I think a fight broke out while we were playing. I'm pretty sure. Not that was unusual.
It did. Yeah, that was the
There's some guy sitting. I remember some guy sitting on the floor because everybody was sitting on the floor. It was kind of a local neighborhoody thing.
Yes.
And everybody showed up at this gig, and all these bands were just completely insane, except for the Erasers. They were like a rock band, but everybody else was nuts. And I remember this guy getting off the floor and confronting James because he kept jumping in the audience and just, like a cockroach jumping on somebody,
Yeah.
And this guy was just not having it. He got upset.
Crazy and really great.
That was a really important gig for a lot of people, I remember.
Yeah, that seemed like kind of a marker.
The genius of James Chance was incredible too, but I love the contortions. I just love that. So then I'm a Pat fan, Pat's one of my favorite all-time guitarists. And now for all these years, whenever I see Pat play, I start looking at how is she doing that? What is she doing? I've done this for years. And then after 10 seconds, I just forget about all that and I'm just transported. I'm like, whoa, that is some funky ass slithery shit. I don't know. What is she doing? And I just love it, and I like outside guitarists. You are one of my favorites ever. So as are you, Thurston.
I totally agree with you.
I don't know how she does it. I don't even try to look anymore and figure it out, but I used to for years. Like, what?
I think all the guitar playing in our group was informed by Pat, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah. There was a few guitarists. It was you and Glenn, for sure. And also Connie from Mars. We were really into her.
Oh, yeah. Connie influenced me. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's funny, Jim, what I do is so simple. I always keep it like as simple as possible. Someday we'll get together and play guitar. It would be fun.
Yeah, simple for you.
Well, my whole
thing is
I make things up, which I'm sure you do too. You both do.
I have no idea how to play real guitar. Let's put it that way.
How to play what?
Like real guitar. Like when people want to jam and let's do this or let's do this song. Like I have no idea. I have no concept how to play like real traditional guitar. I mean, I can play an E chord, or I can maybe play Louie Louie to some degree. But it stops there.
I'm at about the same place.
I'm so glad to hear that, because if, say, I were playing with other people and they said, "Here, can you play this guitar part?" I'd say, "Can you give me a couple hours in another room?" And maybe but I doubt it.
Right.
Couple of years.
Not my thing. Couple of years.
I know. It's even like, okay, we're going to play blues in C. I'm like, what? I mean, I sort of learned that over the years, like, the blues progression. But over COVID, I thought, maybe I'll learn how to really play guitar. I started looking at some of those leads and stuff. And I thought, no, I can't. I don't want to do that. What if I did that? What would people think if I started going?
But if you go on YouTube, there are hundreds of thousands of teenagers that can play all that shit. So why would we ever have to, or want to?
Yeah.
But the other key shining light, of course, is Cynthia of the Bush Tetras, because your vocals and fronting and style with Pat, you guys, the whole band, it's a band, and Dee's always important. And I always saw the early shows with Laura for years, but really you two guys are just remarkable. Like what comes from your collaborations are, so important to us. So
thanks, Jim. It's funny, Cynthia and I, there's a certain chemistry, and we've been doing it for so long. It's amazing. I'll sometimes just send her a riff and she'll say, "Oh, I have these lyrics." And then it just gels. It's always sort of, I love it that it works out that way.
I remember seeing you guys too. When you guys first started playing. I remember seeing a few gigs, and then you went on your first tour of the States, whatever that was, what Bob Singerman sent you out, and then and then I remember you came back, and there was a gig at Hurrah, and I remember going to see you guys because you were back in New York, and Bush Tetras were playing at Hurrah, and you had advanced so much, like just from touring, like all of a sudden you guys were just so fluid. And it was amazing. And I always remember you were doing a cover of Cold Turkey. Am I right about that? Yeah. And I just remember watching you, Cynthia. You were just like draped over the microphone as if you were just you were just a world weary, and you were just like like your arm was over the microphone. You just kept saying, no, no, no. And I was just like, it was so beautiful. And I was just like, after all those kind of few years of like no wave or whatever, and it was just like, now it was like 1980, 81, and you were just sort of like chanting no, no, no into this like this cold winter night at Hurrah. It was just like, it was, for me, it was like, and I was alone, by myself, because as I usually was. And it just like, it hit me so hard. I really fell in love with you guys completely. And Pat was wearing these trousers where you had just the slightest rip in your crotch.
That's the first time I've heard that.
Oh man. And the stage was like, stage at Hurrah was fairly high. And I was just thinking like, God, this is the coolest looking group in the world.
Oh, God, showing their underwear.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you had some underwear on, but but it was cool.
Phew.
It was,
getting off.
But it was super cool.
We were skanky, and Cynthia was singing, "No, don't send us back to Atlanta again." Every time we went someplace on that tour, we had to pass through the Atlanta airport because it was a cheap airfare that way.
Eastern Airlines.
We'd play like in San Francisco. We'd have to fly to Atlanta to go play LA.
Oh yeah,
we were fried.
I remember in a very early photograph of you guys, I was struck by the irony of Pat wearing a Van Halen T-shirt in like 1980 or whatever it was. Yeah, and I thought, wait, that's ironic in an interesting way,
Cynthia had a Jaws T-shirt.
Yes. Because we had that song Jaws.
I was really very impressed by that at the time.
We found those at a 99-cent store in Chambers Street. I remember that.
Yeah,
Jaws T-shirts. But I've always been a secret, like hard rock fan. So I probably sort of secretly liked Van Halen, but of course I was hoping it would be seen as ironic.
Yes, good style. You guys still have good style. I love seeing you live. I like what's like, what are they wearing? It's always kind of cool.
Yeah, I think like when our first gig, I was like doing the clothing design, Jim, as you know, and I designed all these striped T-shirts like for everybody. And I thought it was so cool because we grew up at the Motown thing. We thought, let's like have a uniform. So I made these like, striped shirts, and we were so young and like excited. We got these little uniforms on. Then we tried the bandanas, and that got out of control. Like Dee wore like 20 bandanas, like on his legs, on his arms, on his head. It was like enough with the bandanas.
When you guys went to London and played, I guess when Ruth Polsky brought you guys over there and you did that thing, and that was kind of a big deal for any band to come over here and play. And I remember that being the word on the street, like you guys and Polly Rock and the Bongos, whoever went over there. And did the Del Byzantines go as well? Were you part of that?
We came, and actually Ruth Polsky was our manager for a while until her death. But we came over only to do promotion. We didn't actually play.
When the Bush Tetras came back, I remember seeing Dee on the street, and he was totally decked out with like creepers, like London creeper shoes. And I
we did some shopping in Kings Road.
I just crossed his path like on, and I didn't really know Dee to say anything like, "Hey, man," but I knew he was Dee from the Bush Tetras, and we kind of crossed paths on 2nd Avenue, like as one would, and I was struck by, wow, he came back from London with some really nice creepers. Because nobody really wore those shoes in New York so much. He was like, he just wore torn apart sneakers or motorcycle boots or something.
Yeah, I used to find shoes, like used shoes. That was my big thing. I'd never do that now, but for some reason, I thought they had a little story in them and they'd help me on stage.
Oh, wow.
Red cowboy boots.
I remember when we went to London and we were staying, 3 of us, me and Philippe and Phil Klein, in one really crummy hotel room. And it was like Beggar's Banquet, or our label said, "Oh, well, you guys can go in our record room and take some vinyl if you want." And what we did, we had no money. So we each took like a massive amount of vinyl records and then headed to the nearest record store to cash them in so we could eat, It's one of those kind of deals, but I'm sure you guys remember all of that. Those kind of shenanigans.
God. Those hotels were so crappy. And they're like they had the bugs, and we would be like all four in the same room with the beds lined up, and you had to climb over the beds to get.
Yes, cots.
Oh my God. It was like Goldilocks,
There's a famous like rock and roll hotel here. It was called the Columbia or something like that. And that's where
yes. I think we stayed there, the Columbia. At another date, I stayed there at one point, another time.
Yeah, I don't think they exist so much anymore. If they do, I don't know. London, like New York, has sort of changed. It's become somewhat moneyed for the most part.
Somewhat, I would say. Very.
Yeah, but there's still pockets here that are very kind of old school and gritty and sort of street style, and
But your neighborhood, what is it, Stoke Newington?
Yeah,
that's changed a lot in like 10 years.
Yeah, totally. I used to come here in the 80s because we would stay at Richard Boone's house here. Yeah, it was kind of like, for me, it felt like at the end of the earth. And it was kind of, the streets were a little dangerous. But, coming from New York, you never really felt too much in danger because, you dealt with being in the East Village and whatever. But
we were used to
nobody has guns here, This is like, there's no gun culture here. So you never feel that threat.
Oh, right. Even the police don't carry guns, right?
Yeah. So that anxiety doesn't really exist. But at first I just felt it was just kind of alien. And that was sort of what kind of, you didn't really know what to expect.
Well, we're used to watching our backs, from the early days in New York.
Yeah.
What about when you guys worked at the Bleecker Street Cinema? Was that who was working there? That was always sort of like a bit of a legend.
It was me and Laura. We
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I always heard that was the Too Many Creeps legend, was like when you guys worked there.
Yeah, I was the ticket taker and she was the manager. We had quite a little scheme going. But I'd sit back there and I wrote the first verse of Too Many Creeps behind that desk because the people were bugging me. Leave me alone. Don't ask me so many questions. It was that was a great theater, great film. It's Art Film House.
Yeah, I got in there free all the time, Pat.
I know, and we saw all those so many great films. That was the cool part of it.
So how did you two connect?
Well, Laura came a little bit before Cynthia came to New York City, and I met Laura through Adele Bertay, who I was in the Contortions with. They were both from Cleveland, and so they knew each other. You guys all went to the Art Institute, right?
Yes, Cleveland Art Institute.
So I met Laura. Laura and I ended up hooking up, and then, lo and behold, here comes Cynthia and Barbara Clark from, Cleveland. And the four of us hung out a lot.
The four of you? Who was the fourth person?
Well, Barb Clark was we were kind of a little, we just hung out a lot because they all knew each other from Cleveland Art Institute. Cynthia, anything to add to that?
Well, I remember walking on 2nd Avenue and I saw Laura, and I had seen you play, Pat, because I stayed at, Jim, what was that hotel? The Empire? What was it?
The Empire Hotel, yeah.
So I was staying there and I walked down all the way downtown and went to see the show because I knew Adele Bertay too. And I wanted to see the Contortions. And it was another wild scene where he hit the sound man in the head with a microphone. And it was like some bloody scene and somebody had to go to the hospital. And I thought, how great. And I saw Pat, but I thought Pat was like a really hot, cute boy. I was convinced. And then
she is a really hot, cute boy.
She is a force. So I was like, when I saw her on the street with Laura, I was like, I was kind of a little starstruck because I loved seeing that band. That was different than anything I'd seen in Cleveland too. The Contortions was like a real spectacle. It was really great. Wow. So that's like when I saw you, Pat, on the street, I thought, great. She knows Laura. Yeah. So it was all this kind of serendipity.
And then we were all living on 6th Street. We just hung out. So then when the Contortions fell apart, I was jamming with Dee and Laura. And who could we get to sing? My best friend, Cynthia. And
I wasn't so willing though. I had a lot of trepidation. I had a little stage fright. So I had to
talk her into it.
I mean, everybody thought I was so like aloof. I was just scared shitless. I just closed my eyes, and whenever I'm really nervous, I look very blasé for some reason. So.
No.
I was super curious who you were, because having seen the Contortions and all the other bands that they were associated with, like in the 70s, and then to see the Bush Tetras, and then you were like the singer, I was like, who is that? Like, how did she get that job? I was
asking myself the same question.
But you were great, and that band was so good. And I used to walk by your rehearsal space it was on like First Street,
6080s First,
and it had that pull down metal gate.
And right gate,
And I think I remember. I seem to remember like rehearsing in there at some point early on with Sonic Youth in '81, but before then, somebody had painted on the front of that in really big letters, "Bush Tetras loves Eight-Eyed Spy." Like really big. It filled the entire front of like the pull down gate. Like Bush Tetras love Eight-Eyed Spy, and Eight-Eyed Spy was just kind of happening and just starting, and that was also like you guys sort of seem to have started at the same time, and in a way, it was like these two super groups coming out of like what was happening with No Wave.
Oh, from the No Wave, yeah. We actually, we did play with them quite a bit.
And Bradley Fields was from Ohio too. There was that Ohio connection too, right?
Right.
Weird, right? It's just so weird.
The thing I love, just to interject, about the Bush Tetras initially, when I first heard the Bush Tetras, obviously I loved the Contortions so much, and there's a connection between them for sure. But when you take James's like James Brown referential, like saxophone and that part of the music away, and you get back to this guitar, drums, bass, vocal thing of the Tetras, it was related but different, and also there's a masculine thing about James, that like testosterone poisoning thing where, he's very aggressive, and the Tetras are aggressive in a way musically, but it's tempered by the fact that you guys are predominantly female too, which I've always loved about the Bush Tetras. And again, it doesn't, what's the difference between male, female artists, whatever, but there's something that it infused the Bush Tetras with that was very particular, and so strong, really strong.
There was no band that sounded like you guys. It was that's what really sort of grabbed me when I first heard you. It was really sultry. It was really slinky. It was very groovy. Like you guys just super had like a tight groove. There was a distinction between the Bush Tetras and like what came before with like the Contortions in a way where it seemed like all of a sudden like there was no it wasn't like you were scared of being possibly more musical or something, like the musicality being more maybe, or not musical, like, because that doesn't make sense. It maybe sort of not scared of actually employing more traditional motifs into the music. Whereas I think in a lot of the bands beforehand, especially around No Wave, was just like, it was this real sort of radical take of just like not dealing with any traditional motifs at all, whatever, just except for, James's like funk fetishism, even that was just it was just kind of crazed. Whereas I think in a way the Bush Tetras it was kind of this growth in a way where you kind of were able to sort of temper that kind of attitude, and it brought the audience with you. It's like I felt like I was it bringing me to a place where I was kind of growing just listening to you guys.
Cool.
And I always found it like I mean this as a compliment. It was sort of like a damaged version of funk and reggae mixed in there, or damaged, I mean, in a positive way, sort of fractured somehow, but it was in there, and that's very different, Thurston, than like, say, Arto's guitar playing, which was devoid of references really, except maybe Brazilian percussion instruments or whatever, but yeah, that's so striking, the Bush Tetras, and dance music too,
Yeah, I think we thought we were a dance band. Yeah, we thought we were a dance band somehow.
Well, you are.
What happened was, No Wave was No Wave was really about deconstructing any sort of rock music. Like, it can't sound like anything that has ever been done before. So they were really going out there. And I think that was, it lasted a very short time. I mean, I think there's still people kind of doing versions of that, but as a movement, how much of that can you really take? I couldn't take it anymore. So, when Dee started playing these like kind of danceable drum beats, we were like, yeah, well, this is groovy. Also, there were a lot of bands coming over from England that were more danceable. And it was just that moment, like, No Wave was over. We're going into this other era. And, the fractured reggae and funk was just us doing our best to try to copy what we were hoping we could sound like, and it came out sideways, but somehow it worked in its own little way.
There's a quote of John Lennon's, I don't know exactly what it is, but he said something about originality comes from not quite being able to imitate, your influences.
Yeah,
I love. It's very valuable saying that because
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I haven't heard that quote by him, but that's exactly right. Mm-hmm. And he didn't read music either. I think a lot of musicians, they play intuitively. And
at the time, it seemed like the bands from London, there was a certain imperious quality to them. So when you had a band like Public Image coming to town or whatever, it's like, it seemed like they really just sort of had such a huge sound of dealing with like rhythm music, and that was also very experimental. And in a way, I felt like what was happening in New York, it was more interesting to me because it kind of was more fractured and it maybe less cosmetic or something. Mm-hmm. I mean, the no wave bands seemed like it was like that the music was like fully formed just as soon as it started, because it couldn't really go anywhere else. It was like this concept of just like, this is what it is, and it's something that could never ever be sold to the mainstream. So why even like think about that? Because if that's just not going to exist. And so in a way, it's like, well, where do you go from there? It's like, do you just sort of stay in this kind of finished thing, or do you move forward with something else? And that's what I saw happening to most people, I think, involved with the music. I mean, you guys and Arto and James even, and certainly Lydia kind of went her ways, different ways. And, so it was really curious to sort of see the different developments that different people were doing. The Bush Tetras I just thought you guys got better and better. I remember seeing a show at the Bottom Line that you played, which was kind of like a big showcase for any band to play.
Yeah. But that was a weird place to play. God,
of course, yeah.
Well, for us, it was weird because there's people sitting at tables, so that was
eating.
Odd. Yeah.
It was you guys in the Ray Beats, and it was a bit of a coming out gig in a way.
We met like Thurston too, like when he was outside the riot gates.
Yeah,
and we were like, and it was like,
who's this cute kid hanging out here?
Yeah, I thought he was like 10 or something.
Outside of the what? Outside of the what gates?
The riot gates. I lived on First Street.
Oh,
our studio on First Street. You were out. You were hanging out there once. We came out and you were there. Yeah, and you did look really way younger than to us than we were, but apparently you weren't. But go ahead, Cynthia.
Well, I lived there, so I kind of remember seeing you more right outside those gates.
I was kind of a bit of a loner. It's funny. I was playing with this band in the 70s that were all RISD students, and they were kind of the class after like David Byrne and everybody. And so they came to New York, and I got involved with them. It's a long story, so I won't go into it. But those are the people I was playing with. But we were never really accepted in any any faction whatsoever downtown. They were kind of like part of this whole Jenny Holzer kind of scene. And we would always play like in her loft space. And then we would play at Arlene Schloss's place, A's, quite a bit. And that was
So
kind
they
of
were
our
more
scene.
connected to the art world in a way.
But yeah, no clubs would book us whatsoever.
RISD,
you know. So I was really sort of envious of bands that you guys had where you're always playing at these clubs. And I was like, why come we don't get to play these places? And so that was kind of my ambition in a way. It was like, just maybe stop playing the art lofts and play at an actual club. And Hillary would never book us, but she did once, but nobody came.
What was that band called?
We were called the Coachmen. We never had a record out until like years after we broke up, and I had somebody put it out with the tapes. But yeah. Say, I think I don't remember you guys. But I remember we were playing with the Static, and Beth and Scott B were showing some films up at Jenny's. And I remember standing there, and somebody was asking somebody else, like, "Oh, who's playing tonight?" And somebody said, "The Coachmen." And he's like, "Oh, what is that?" And then Adele was standing there, and she looked at me, and she knew I was in that band. And she said something really nice. She said, like, "Oh, they're really good. You should check them out." And she looked at me and winked. And I'll never forget that. I was like, I've always been like Adele's hugest fan after that. And I told her this story. I just like, she was in New York recently, right? Doing something.
Well, she wrote a book about Peter Loeffner, quite a good book. So she's been doing that. But I also, when you guys were talking about Adele and Barbara Clark too, we're still close with Barbara, who is a very amazing jewelry designer, Clear Metals, just to plug her, because we're still close with her. But Thurston, this is a little personal, but what year did you first come to New York? Late 70s? I
first started late 76.
Because I remember the first time I remember talking to you in the late 70s, this is a little personal. We were outside of Todd's copy shop waiting for these two girls that worked there that we thought were incredible because they wore like mini kilts and the biker boots and stuff. And it was Kim and Sarah Driver. And we were outside.
This is true.
So we were like hanging out, waiting for these hot girls to be done working. I remember that.
I guess that worked out.
I started working there myself. That's the very first. Yeah, that's how I remember meeting you as well. And we would just sort of, you and I would just sort of sit around while they kind of worked.
Wait for them to get done working. Maybe they'd buy us a coffee later,
Where was that?
Coffee
on Mott Street.
Mott Street, just south of Prince.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And all these artists used to come in. They're crazy people, Robert Rauschenberg. Gotta make a copy of this. There's all these people, Robert Frank,
totally
coming in.
Lawrence Weiner used to come in there.
Mm-hmm.
It was a total hangout. It was Jean-Michel used to go in there all the time.
Jean-Michel. And television, I think they color Xerox their first album cover there for Marquee Moon.
I think they did that because before Todd's, it was a place called Jamie Canvas.
Right. I think they did that there.
Yeah. Right. And then Todd was the guy at Jamie Canvas, and he went rogue and started his own independent place on Mott Street.
And he took his color Xerox with him, his machine.
I
used to
he did
Xerox at Jamie all the time. Yeah.
And we were the first employees there.
So
that's how that happened, I guess.
Cool. And I think back then, like Xerox places were important for bands. You had to copy your flyers.
That's how we made our
put
posters.
Your flyers up.
Did you keep all the Bush Tetras ephemera and the flyers and the posters and the?
We have a lot.
Things?
I mean, I've moved a million times, so I'm like the worst archivist. I have things. I have a few things. Like we're donating things to the Punk Museum in Las Vegas.
There's a punk museum in Las Vegas?
Yes. I'm surprised they haven't approached you, Thurston.
They haven't? Yeah, I'm surprised too.
I'm not going to give my stuff to a punk museum in Las
I'm just
Vegas.
loaning. I'm doing a loaner. I'm loaning. I don't have much. I got to keep it.
Oh, it's a loan.
It's a loan.
But is it true that in Las Vegas they recreated CBGB's is it really, is that true?
I think so.
That's kind of scary.
I heard about that.
I haven't been there.
There's a CBGB at Newark Airport.
There is?
Oh, yeah. Really?
Have you been there? Oh, that's really cool.
I've been there. I haven't seen it.
Check it out.
Oh no! Well,
they have the awning at Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. We saw that.
Oh my God!
Oh yeah, that's one cheesy place. Just gonna say, I mean, it's Cleveland. It's good for Cleveland, I guess.
Whose idea was it to do this box set?
Oh, we were, after the 40th anniversary, we thought like it's really time to put it all together, and our everything was in a mess, really. Like, what you could still get, what was still available, what was out of print. So we thought it was time before we all croak.
Well, we're working with this great record company, Wharf Cat Records, and they wanted to do it because, like Cynthia just said, a lot of the stuff that we had out is not available anymore because it's not in distribution. So we took 30 songs out for about 5 different records, Cynthia, and or maybe 6, and. We're excited to get that out. So it will be available. And then we hope to get the old things out later with them, with our distributor secretly.
Yeah, just digitally.
But it's kind of nice to get this out because we never in the 80s made a full album. We made a bunch of singles and EPs.
Right.
So it's after all this time, it's really, really nice to have this condensed piece of history like that.
Yeah,
I can't wait to see it.
Oh, it looks beautiful, and your piece was great.
Yeah, and you guys contributed. Thank you.
Yes, I have to say we have this new bass player, RB Corbett. And so during COVID, the 3 of us, she, Pat, and I, did a hybrid version, of trying to write songs together. And we wrote like 10 songs. So that's been exciting. Like writing is really fun. As you guys know, you write all the time.
Always write new songs. Coming up with new stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
What, Thurston? What are you saying?
Well, I haven't really touched the guitar in quite a while, but I feel a little sort of.
You haven't what?
I haven't really touched the guitar in quite a. I have this one here.
Yeah, you just came off the road. You just did it. You just did gigs. Okay,
that's 12 string.
That's
you're good
can
for
see
a month now.
I love a quote years ago. I remember somebody asked Arto Lindsay in an interview, "Do you practice the guitar? Do you play it frequently?" He said, "Oh no, my guitar is very lazy. She lies in bed all day eating chocolate bonbons."
Oh my God,
that's perfect.
That Arto.
But Jim, you've got a great setup there to record and play.
Well, upstate, I have my teenager's dream studio now. It's in one bay of a garage. I have my instruments, my art table, all my $400 guitars, my little synthesizers and stuff. I record on it on GarageBand, and I'm in heaven working there. I love it.
Oh, that's so cool.
Happy. Yeah.
Oh, and you're going on the road with Squirrel in the winter.
Well, we're just going to do a brief thing in February for a couple of weeks and go to Europe and do our live scores to the Man Ray films, the surrealist films of Man Ray. So
I've seen that. That's so good, Jim. I love it.
Yeah, it gets better. We've been doing it for some years infrequently because we have a lot of other stuff going on. But yeah, that'll be fun.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I love what you guys do.
Thank you.
And
Well,
Thurston,
cool, yeah.
Thurston, what about you?
I'm just sort of heads down trying to finish a manuscript. I got like a book deal to write these series of music essays about sonic life,
Sonic Life. Wow.
which is what it's titled. So I have to.
Great.
I sort of have about 6 months to a year to complete it, and I'm kind of halfway through. So,
Okay, so you're going to be
Good
writing.
title.
Yeah, really good title.
but I'm still. I have a band here, and we play, and we're doing a few shows in France beginning in November.
Cool.
Oh,
I've been
who's in the band? Who's in the band, Thurston?
It's just a local guitar player who I really like named James Sedwards. The bass player is this woman, Deb Googe, who was in a band called My Bloody Valentine.
Oh, yeah, love
yeah.
her. I saw
Never
her
heard of him.
And
Too noisy.
I'll send you a
that's too
link.
noisy.
Too noise.
No, we saw you play with her. She's
And
amazing.
Steve.
she's cool. Yeah,
Steve.
yeah. And Steve
Steve
plays.
too.
Well, Steve plays with me in New York, but here in London, I have a London drummer named Jem Dalton. I was just in New York. Steve and I did a trio with Ernie Brooks from the Modern Lovers.
No,
And we-
and I
and we-
missed that.
That was really
I
fun.
knew about it. I was upstate, but
Yeah,
I've
I
seen
was
your
out of
band.
town, but
The
yeah,
version with Steve, I've seen several times.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just great band.
It is.
Fantastic.
That's
And
fun.
I love Deb. Deb is like, she's another force.
She is
She's
amazing.
incredible.
She's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love her, and I love that. Yeah, your two guitars are so beautiful. When you do the two electric 12-string thing too, it's just really beautiful. I think.
Yeah.
yeah.
Now we just have to get the three of you playing together.
No, with the four of us together.
Yeah.
Oh, I do. I have my silver tone.
You got a guitar. There's a beautiful
Yes.
silver tone guitar
Right
back there.
See it, Jim? She has
Yeah,
right
I
there.
see it.
I want to
Yeah.
hear you play that.
Me too.
I have this one riff I go over and over. I've tried to play for Pat. It's like
That's
I get
all we-
obsessed with one riff.
One riff is all you need, kid.
Yeah, well, it's one little, it's like it's a couple
It's
riffs
true.
put together.
One chord.
Yeah, it's kind of
I
like
got-
the way I sing, just keep repeating the same thing.
Oh, I love it.
Me too. I got to do a fun thing recently. I don't even know. Patti Smith made these 3 records for Soundwalk Collective based on Rimbaud and one on Artaud
cool.
and one on Dumas, right? So I got to remix one of them in this poem of Rimbaud's Eternity that Patti did, and it has Sufi singers, and I put all these reverse guitars, and
Oh,
it sounds really
cool.
drony, surfy, psychedelic, not surfy, Sufi. But it was so much fun, but she hasn't heard it yet, so she might hate it. I don't know.
You
It came out
produced
cool.
You
I
produced
remixed
it. In your studio.
I
upstate,
produced in my little studio a remix. I removed the Philip Glass tracks, and
Oh, I want to hear that. Oops.
it was cool.
Deep
The
Glass.
original was cool, but mine is more my style. So it was really fun.
It's like a remix.
That's a really beautiful photograph of, is it Austin next to the guitar on the wall back there?
Yeah. Let me show you.
That's really hip.
Yeah, that's his wife
Look at
took that. Wait, where am I? Oh, that's his paintings from high school.
He
I'll
is
give you a tour of.
Austin
See, there it is.
Gallery.
what
Yeah,
an
there it
artist.
is.
Austin is an amazing artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Musician, man.
Yeah.
And that's why I missed your show because.
Oh,
Austin
that's
was,
right.
you know,
Yeah. He was doing something. Yeah.
And then, you're supposed to play it. We got there at 7 and it was like 9 and the first thing was going on and they were outside and
That's how it is. Yeah.
they have these generator shows. Kids do these generator shows here in New York. They're really cool. It's like a cool idea because all the DIY places are disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Even before COVID, it's like sad because we had a lot of venues to play at. It was so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
It's, like I always think about Tier 3, man. That was like such a clubhouse. It's so fun.
I love Tier 3, and the band was right on the floor. I remember seeing the Young Marble
Yes.
Giants, and I'm standing 2 feet away from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There
Really
no
was so much.
stage, right?
No stage.
The fact that that place only existed for like a year and a couple of months It's hard to believe. When
I
you look at
know.
A lot of bands went through there, and
it just seemed like that it was such a timeless kind of period where you would have this trail where you'd be at tier 3, and then you're like, oh, okay, let's just walk over to the Mud Club and see what's going on. And you would meet people going either which way, and you would trade sort of like information, like, oh, who's over there? What's happening over there? What's happening over there? And then you would all meet at Dave's Luncheonette, and you would sort of like, you'd take a little break, and then you would do the same thing again. It was just like this back and forth trail for a while. It was like it was really curious. But the fact that it only lasted for just like a year or so, it seemed like it seems like such a pronounced period of time.
So much happened in that amount of time. Yeah.
And it was so kind of, like desolate over there. There was like no people. I'd ride my bike. I rode Barbara on my handlebars to tier 3, and there was no traffic. There's no traffic at all. You just go and, and then have an egg cream. Yeah. Egg cream at Dave's.
Yeah.
Remember El Teddy's? El Teddy's?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then the people coming out of El Teddy's would sort of sneer at us dirty youth on their way to tier 3.
Well, El Teddy's was kind of a mob place, I think.
Yeah, right.
And and right next to tier 3, it was funny, an odd location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was always a certain smell in the air down there. There was like this wafting factory, because it was actually thread waxing factories and such, but it had there was a very distinct odor. As soon as you sort of got into Tribeca on the west side there, it would really permeate the air. And I always remember just all of a sudden it was just there, and I've never smelled that smell again.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Yeah, probably from the factories, because it's certainly not there now.
Do you remember on Prince and Mulberry, when I lived on Prince Street, there was a chicken slaughterhouse on Prince and Mulberry Street on the southwest side, and there'd be thin chicken blood running in the street, and so weird. If you go there now, it's like,
forget about it.
$2,000 shoes for, I don't even know anymore. But I tell people that, and they're like, are you sure you're remembering this correctly?
No, there was one right here in Broome Street, too, over in Soho. There was a place where a chicken place like that.
Oh, God.
So, that was going on back in the day.
Yeah, it's gross. And they have those big trucks sometimes parked outside of those chicken places with all the sort of dead or like dying chickens stuffed into the back of them, and
I remember, and those wooden crates,
the wooden crates,
horrible,
and
horrible.
The feathers kind of blowing out on the cobblestones.
So you had to be really tough to live in New York. Man,
it has really changed.
A little bit.
Yeah, but now we're sounding old. These kids today, they don't know what it was like. Yeah, we had to pass that chicken slaughterhouse on the way to tier 3.
It's kind of like I walk 5 miles to school kind of thing.
Exactly.
And what are you doing? Yeah.
So what's the Bush Tetras tour plans?
Well, that's a good question.
Wow.
But we haven't. We are kind of right now. We're doing the box set, and we're doing the show at Poisson Rouge where you played, and we're playing the 13th of November, which I think both of you too. You're not going to be around.
I won't be there yet.
I might come back, but I might not be able to. I'm trying to figure it out still.
Yeah. And then we're doing a signing, box set signing at Rough Trade on the 12th. Cool. And then
at Howell on the 9th of October, this Saturday, but that's a kind of different story.
That's a party. Yeah. But I think we're really into these new songs.
So we might just go record rather than the tour. I don't know.
Hone them. We're going to refine them because it's good. Like we still do that thing of writing. We're not self-conscious. We just write what's in there and don't think too much about it. We don't, we just try to refine it enough that we like the arrangement, and then we just like to record it. So hopefully we'll be doing that because the touring, I don't know.
No, it's tough.
We will be in 2022, but we don't have any set dates. So, and Jim,
Yeah.
you're going. Are you going to do that again in New York at all?
I don't know. We don't have dates for that yet. I'm not sure what we're doing.
I'd love to see that again.
And we're recording too, and I'm working on a new collaboration with Josef Van Vissem, who I've made a few records with. So
Yeah.
just working on stuff as they go. I'd like to do some live squirrel stuff that wasn't Man Ray, also just some kind of noisy, semi-improvised things, but we don't have a plan yet. But I say, you guys got to record, keep recording. And anytime you're live, I hope I can see you too in November. But I love you guys live. I got to say, I get really energized every time you play. I'm like up for a few days, it's really a positive thing. So
nice to hear. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, thanks. I think, we really love performing. That's one thing Pat and I get really out of our minds. To say more than we used to. Like really, we've refined the kind of going to the other place on stage. You can just kind of spiral up there.
Music,
about that space.
Music is a natural high.
It is, man. Who needs drugs?
Sure
Who
is.
needs drugs? Yeah,
exactly.
Hugs, not drugs.
But yes, we've come a long way. We've come a long way from Dave's and all that.
We survived.
We did.
Oh, yeah, there's that. Thank you so much for doing this, you guys, and being so supportive. We super appreciate it.
We do.
Anytime,
and
always.
It's great to see you, and we'll see you, it sounds soon. And
I hope so.
Okay.
Yeah, and thank you guys. It's so nice just to see you, even though you're tiny little pictures on it. But Bush Tetras forever.
Yes.
Yes.
I love you both. Love you both much.
Likewise.
Much.
You guys too.
Thanks for listening to the Talkhouse Podcast, and thanks to the Bush Tetras, Thurston Moore, and Jim Jarmusch for chatting. If you like what you heard, please follow Talkhouse on your favorite podcasting and social media services. This episode was produced by Melissa Kaplan, and the Talkhouse theme is composed and performed by The Range. See you next time!